Everybody. Oh, there's the announcements. Hey everybody, how you guys all doing? We're gonna let everybody kind of stream in here for a little bit. My name's Mike Bazar. We got Bo Dickey with us as well. It's Vector Choice, and we wanted to talk about the most interesting thing in the world, which is WISPs, written information security plan, and go through that. Obviously, a lot of this is required, and so that's why we'll kind of spend the next little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of intro things, and then give you the link to download the template, and then we're actually going to walk through that template. We want this to be a webinar that is as useful as possible, and not necessarily just full of theory and posture and whatever else, but actually kind of get into some of the nitty gritty and the details on this thing. So that is the plan. So I'm one of the partners. Will and I, we merged our companies about a year and a half ago. So I'm one of the partners here at Vector Choice and the CRO over all the kind of make sure all the revenue is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then Bo is our chief security officer. And so, we're just going to kind of come bring together from questions and things we've seen, plus what Bo knows and all of his wealth of security knowledge and talk through this thing in the WISP. And like I said, really try to spend a lot of time actually on the Word document and what that looks like and what's needed out there. There is the chat. So as we get into some of this, if you guys have questions as we're talking through things, please, put questions and things in the chat as we go. And then just a little quick couple things about Vector Choice and who we are. So, we've been on the Inc. 5000, Titan 100, Best and Brightest in Atlanta, the Southeast Regionals for Inc., MSP 501. So we mostly throw these up here, not necessarily to toot our own horn. I mean, it is that by definition, but to kind of also say, like, we're not fly by night. We've been around. We're a solid, growing company. We have experience in a lot of this. A lot of the people that we work with, a lot of the time we'll see, wrong information that's out there because they don't have a CISO. They don't have a Bo. Or whatever it might be, and haven't spent as much time in the regulations and kind of looking at what needs to happen. And there is nothing to stop somebody from being an MSP and going out and being like, we're an IT provider. And so we just kind of throw this out there to build it up a little bit. Again, on that same thing, we've got clients in 23 states. We've worked internationally with some clients on a bunch of different sectors, whether it's, defense or accounting, finance, professional services, all those kinds of things. After we merged, we put our headquarters in Lubbock, Texas, partially because office space, because Texas is nice for business and some other things. But the blue states there are states where we actually have techs and people on the ground, and the yellow states are where we've worked with people. And I'm sure there's more where we've worked with random customers here and there and other stuff as we've gone through it. But what you guys are all here for, what is FTC compliance? That's one of the big things that we want to really talk about. And so really at its core, the easiest thing to kind of say, what is this FTC safeguards rule, is the government basically got tired of everybody getting their stuff hacked. And so there was a lot of data leakage that was happening. It's obviously a problem. It still happens, business email compromise and wire fraud and people stealing each other's data. And it costs the government, it costs our economy, it costs a lot of people a lot of money cleaning this stuff up, trying to insurance companies reimbursing people when they have things and everything else. So the FTC came out and said, we're going to make this set of rules. And this generally applies to people that deal with financial information. So it is CPAs, it is auto dealers, it is some insurance companies, it's some financial planners. It's there's 10 or 12 examples they have, but at its core, it's people who are dealing with financial records. Like that's really what you're looking at. If you have financial information, you're most likely affected by this. So CPAs a lot of the time is big for them because CPAs have tax returns and a lot of financial information, right? But that's why car dealers and these other people fall into it. One of the other big things I want to hit right up front is we hear also a lot of, I'm under 5,000 employees or under 5,000 records, so I don't have to comply with this. And the rule is broken into two parts. And Bo, correct me if I'm saying anything or add some color. But if you're over 5,000 records, then you have a more complex set of rules to adhere to. If you're under 5,000 records, then there's things you don't have to do. But a WISP, a written information security plan, is something you have to do on both sides of that. That's part of the reason we're doing this webinar. And really, it's things like you don't have to do an annual penetration test and some other stuff that can be very expensive and hard to do. And finding the right company that can do that can definitely be something that's there. And so, Bo, you want to real quick, just like on that 5,000 records, a lot of people I don't think count that correctly either. And so you want to add a little bit of color of what people should be looking for to see if they fall above or below that line.
Yeah, when we go through and do the assessments for FTC safeguards compliance readiness, A lot of organizations feel like they don't meet the 5,000 minimum records requirement. And really, it's not about the number of people, it's about the records themselves. And what is your data retention? If your state says that you have to retain those tax records for 7 years, then it's counting each year's record for each individual as an unique record toward that number. And so anybody under 5,000, you still have to be FTC safeguards compliant. You just have less requirements to meet than someone who is over 5,000. And so that's really the defining point. There is a lot of people don't take into account the number of years that they've had to maintain those records. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these and wondering, does this apply? Do I need a WISP?
Yeah.
Yes. In most cases, yes.
And that's what I say is a lot of the time, like you have QuickBooks records for your clients, and then those records are now included. So if you've got a QuickBooks file that has 1,000 records in it, that 1,000 counts towards you because it's in your possession. And those are the kinds of things that that end up driving that number up faster than a lot of people typically realize. And so that's one of those things. The other thing I will say about FTC safeguards is, one, you can Google FTC safeguards if you want. Two, we can help you do readiness audits and other things. So, you know, the sales pitch of it or whatever you want to call it, we'll talk about the WISP stuff specifically because that's a big piece of it. But there are other pieces and parts that go into FTC compliance. It is not just having a WISP, a written information security plan. It's also having certain two-factor and other security measures in place and doing updates and tracking some of that information. And so there's a lot of complexity that can go into that. And it can be harder to just say, here's the checkbox. There are a few things that are easier to do than others, and there's some stuff that's hard. So what I will generally say and recommend is, one, we would love to help you if you guys either don't have internal IT or an IT company that can help you. If you have internal IT and they're stuck, they don't know how to do this, we'd love to help work with them, whatever it might be. But if you guys get into this and you're having these questions, especially even as you see as we go through the WISP, you might go, this is just driving a lot more questions, which is what we tend to find as we even go to our clients and say, hey, let's build this out. Questions create more questions, create more questions. And so again, we're happy to help try to walk people through that, work through those things as we possibly need to. So I mostly just say that don't feel overwhelmed and like, I don't know where to go. There's help. We can help you. There's other companies that can help you if you don't want to use us, but you know, there's certainly a lot that can be done to help walk through this. But one of the big things is this WISP, and that's why we wanted to talk about it, because it brings a lot of these other things to light as well. So if you guys will go to vectorchoice.com/WISP-template, you can download the Word document we're about to use. There's no form to fill out. You just click the link and it downloads the Word document, and we'll walk through that. While you guys are doing that, we're going to real quick talk through a little bit of what a WISP is and a couple other things to give you a couple minutes to try to download that so you can walk through. This will also be recorded, so you'll be able to get the recording of this. And so, you know, while it's being recorded, you can always go back and, you know, if you need to, come back and check it and work on this stuff later as well. So what is a WISP? As I've said, it's a written information security plan, and it touches on a lot of things. And you guys can see as well, that's still that vectorchoice.com/WISP-template. That's still there. So you can snag that as well while we're working through these kind of next two slides, and then we'll get into it. So a written information security plan is really just the plan that pulls a lot of these things together. It answers a lot of questions. And again, we'll get through it, but Bo, anything you can chime in here of, you know, who's the security person? What are some of the security protocols that we have in place? What's our acceptable use policy? You know, like there's quite a these things that go into it that really drive that. But I think at its core, what we use it for is it's this set of guidelines, right? And so I don't know if you can maybe comment on that, Bo, in terms of, you know, we go into a lot of places and they just kind of, I don't want to say willy-nilly, but they're just jumping into it. And this WISP helps us build a structure of security and everything else. And so what have you seen as you've talked to clients and help them build this? You know?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we find when we go in to do these assessments is pretty much every organization has a process of how they track the files, where they keep them. You know, the biggest thing is taking into account that it's not just where you store them digitally, but also physical copies of any of these documents, ensuring that both the physical location of any paper files and digital locations are secured. The main objective of the WISP is just to identify those locations and have a documented process that everyone follows and can be held accountable to. You know, the goal of having that WISP is to bring everything together in a centralized location with a clear plan, basically a map of what the policies and procedures are and how you're going to enforce those policies to be and maintain your FTC compliance. The purpose of the WISP is showcasing proper security, complying with applicable data security laws from both state and federal perspectives, documenting and showing auditors what the data safeguards and policies are, that you have them. Most companies will have a process that they follow, but it's not documented. It's tribal knowledge that's passed down around as new hires on board or as someone takes on new responsibilities. There's no documentation to it. There's no policy that governs that process to ensure that there's a way that everyone agrees and acknowledges that this is how we're going to do it. Demonstrating how you are protecting PII or personally identifiable information. The WISP will define what PII you have, where it lives, who has access to it. And then the most important goal and overall reason for it is to protect clients from unauthorized access. And that's the key, the unauthorized access. That can be someone in your organization that has permissions they shouldn't. That can be someone who intentionally or unintentionally leaks information by sending it through an email to the wrong person or posting it to a website, not realizing it, or in today's world, uploading something to a file to artificial intelligence or AI to get it to draft something in a prettier, easier to read way. Those are all ways to leak the data. They're not malicious in nature, but they are unintentional forms of data leakage. And this is designed to prevent those types of things from happening as well as malicious activity.
Yeah, and I think that is honestly, why do you need a WISP? Like that's almost the easiest answer to that is like AI is becoming a big thing, and it's this perfect example of it. It's not that AI is bad, it's that there's certain forms of public AI you shouldn't be putting some information in. It's one of the big reasons that we're proponents of like Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI, and the paid version because you have a walled off data lake and everything else. So the WISP is the thing that's creating this policy so you can go follow this and everything else. And then there's other pieces around it. Like we use a portal that we do that, we'll upload the WISP to if we're doing compliance services for you, but we'll actually track all these things through time. So if you got hacked, if you got audited, if all those other things happen, we can go back and say month to month or quarter to quarter, here's this every year you've reviewed the WISP, here are the revisions, here are the other things to help you be compliant with that. But at its core, again, for this purpose, like the WISP is really the place to pull all this together and make sure that policy's there. Because as Bo said, tribal knowledge fades, somebody doesn't get taught something, they do something, somebody goes and picks up AI. And as a firm, maybe you've talked about how you want to use AI, but that hasn't made it to everybody. And so you put it in the WISP and you say, hey, everybody, we've updated the security plan. Go check it out. This is the new AI stuff. And now you can define that and have that as a company of here's our policy. Because what you don't want to have happen is unintentional data leakage happens. Somebody shares something, puts it into, a chat GPT or whatever other thing. And then somebody wants to come back and sue you for losing the data. Like you want to be able to go back and say, here's the policy. This person violated it. That's why they're not going to work here anymore, whatever it might be. And those are extreme examples, but this is more and more of what we're seeing because you have to have security policy and people are actually getting fired for not following security policy, where in the past it was just a slap on the wrist or whatever. And so this WISP kind of helps pull all that together. So I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second and flip over to the Word document because that's really what everybody wants to be here for, and share that out with everybody. And let me make sure I get this shared correctly. Flipping between all these Zoom windows, and we are going to share which one is it? I've got a couple of different documents open here. That's the one. Tried to close everything and make sure it's there. So is that the right document? You guys are all looking at the same thing, right?
That is the correct document. Yes.
Right. Share a bunch of information I'm not supposed to have. All right. So let me real quick change this because this is a whole lot harder to see. I'm going to do view. We're going to do one page. Actually, let's just do page width and make it big. So hopefully all you guys can see that well enough and what we're going to go through. So some of the stuff is going to be quick and easy, right? Like I'm going to generally skip over stuff that I think everybody should get. When was it created? When does it expire? So again, every year you're supposed to be reviewing this. what's the company name, email, who prepared it, that kind of stuff. So some of these are really simple. And then basically, as you go through this document, these blue lines are what you really want to go and be looking at is the blue color of stuff, right? So the aim of blank company's WISP is to establish and record protective measures, IRS, da, 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 da. Again, I want to go through hit meat and potatoes and not necessarily read everything that's included in here, but I would 100% say you should absolutely review this. If you're going through it, you should read every word and make sure you know what it is, what it means, how it applies to you, because you don't want to have something in here and then you disagree with it and you aren't following it, and now you're actually violating your own policy, and that's way worse if you ever get audited. So you want to make
To that point, Mike, let's focus on PII for a minute because this
Yep.
is going to be a big part of the WISP and most of the policies.
Yep.
What is the PII definition has expanded in scope with FTC safeguards. It used to be any two pieces of information you could use to identify a person, first and last name and a phone number, first and last name and an email address, phone number and email address, any two pieces. That is since expanded for the purposes of this. It's any two pieces still, but the list has expanded to include private email addresses, financial statements, previous tax returns, employment histories, date of birth, tax prep software data. Just it doesn't even have to be the aggregate. It could be aggregate data.
Yeah.
Anything in your CRM's credit card numbers are trackable back to an individual person now. All of those things are being considered and flagged into the PII. So keep those in mind as we're going through this call, and how many places any two pieces of that information exist in any of your systems, or you in physical print in your office stored somewhere.
Yeah. And that's why you go, like, if you have a client, chances are, even if they're a prospect, you have first name, last name, and a phone number because you've talked to them once before. That's now PII, and now that is one of those records you need to think about. So that's why this gets really big really fast, because again, you go back to CRM data. If you do any kind of marketing, you got a MailChimp or a more complex program of Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever, it's pretty easy to think we're going to market to these people so that we can send out our tech tips or our whatever other tax tips or other things you might have. Car dealers and those guys get really big really fast because they want big list possible. Smaller CPA firms a lot of the time thinks we don't fall into this. Then they go and realize they got 1,000 names in a CRM somewhere that they're sending out monthly updates or tips of taxes or whatever. And now there's 1,000, plus they've got a couple thousand clients, plus they've got some older, clients they've worked with, and pretty quickly you get to 5,000 or more. Then you need to do the bigger, list of things that you need to do. And so yeah, definitely make sure you're looking at what PII is. Again, the purpose is you're wanting to showcase proper security, comply with laws, document and show auditors your safeguards. Like, this is what you're doing, which is why it's important to read through this, is so you can show people this is what we're doing. Here's our document. Here's our policy. Get your employees to sign off on it, that kind of thing. And then the scope of this document, just quickly, is identifying where that PII is, right? Is it physical copies? Is it digital copies? Is it in the cloud? Is it on a server? Where does that live? Are people saving copies locally to a computer and they shouldn't be? That kind of stuff. You want to evaluate the impact and repercussions of a breach. So you'll see at the very end, we'll look at that, where you start looking at, like, is this high impact or low impact if that kind of thing happened? You want to catalog existing preventative strategies. So what are you currently doing? Ongoing evaluations, and then complying with the policies. And then here's some FTC safeguard rules and some IRS pubs that basically are, here's some security rules that you need to do. So as you get into this, this is IRS Security 6 checklist, right? So some of this is just some of the stuff the IRS has said. We've put it into the WISP because it's got to be there and you have to comply with this with the IRS stuff. But a lot of these things, it's just pass fail. Do we do it or not? Do we have antivirus? If we do, what's the antivirus name? Do we have anti-spyware? Do we have an anti-phishing toolbar? And this is where I say look through it, because what you may not have is an anti-phishing toolbar, but you have anti-phishing software. So you can change this name to anti-phishing software instead of toolbar, whatever might work with you. And that's why we always say the hard part about a WISP is I can give you this template and you're still going to have to edit it. You're still going to have to go do things, which is why we go back to, if you need help, we can help you through it. Don't necessarily struggle or pencil whip it. Because one of the things we see, not necessarily in this, which we do, but a lot of the time we'll see in people with their cybersecurity forms, they'll fill out for cybersecurity insurance. They'll say, yes, we do all these things. Then they try to make a claim when an actual breach happens and they get denied because they weren't doing it. And if one of the things you do is say, I have a WISP in place, you can bet that that cybersecurity company is going to come back if they're wanting to pay out and say, show us your WISP. And then you're going to say, we have an anti-phishing toolbar, and you don't, and you've just violated your own policy. And they're going to use things like that to try to build a case to not pay out, things like that that you don't want to do. And so this is why I say, just read through these and fill in what you're doing, even if it means you delete a few of these out. And sometimes there's a question like, we use software that is anti-spyware and antivirus all wrapped into endpoint detection and response. So if we're filling this out and you have our tools, we might actually delete a few of these lines because we have them all wrapped up into the EDR, or we're going to fill it out and say this does all of those, and we're going to put the same name for that product in 3 or 4 places because it does all those different things, whatever it might be. But so kind of running down this again, do you have a firewall? What's the firewall name and model number? Do you do 2-factor authentication, which is 2-factor, 2FA, MFA, all the same thing, just different names. And it's basically getting either an email, a text, or an app that sends you a code that you then say, yes, this is me. So we like Duo. We use Duo a lot. Microsoft has their Authenticator app. Google has an app. Authy or some of the other ones you'll see out there. But you're basically trying to say, where are we using 2-factor? So a lot of people will have it not necessarily on their computer. They'll have it on their apps, right? So when I go to log in the tax app, I have to give them a code. When I get a text and I got to punch in a code, or I use the app to do it. When I go log into my email, when I go log into a new computer, like an application on a new computer, you might have to enter a code or those kinds of things. We recommend it as well through apps like Duo on your Windows login where you can, because again, it just increases security to make it so somebody's having a harder time getting in. But what you need to do is when you do this, start putting down either all the applications, right? You can add lines in here and add more things. So you can either do that, but because if you just have something blank like this accessing customer data, well, what if you have one app that accesses customer data that doesn't support 2-factor? Well, technically you'd want to exclude that, right? So what I would even say is you can expand this out and say, we use it in these 10 locations, that's company policy, or these 5 locations, or this 1 location. Again, where do you have it? Where is it set up? And where is it company policy to do it? And that's the stuff that you want to fill out here and make sure that you're putting in. You have anything to add?
Mike, real quick on this. The FTC safeguards rule does not specifically say you must have your Windows login MFA authenticated. However, it is mentioned explicitly in one of those IRS publications that are mentioned in the scope section that it is recommended. So they do have it listed in the IRS publication, but not in the FTC safeguards rule.
Yeah. And that's why I say a lot of these things overlap. And so what we tend to a lot of the time do with clients and stuff is work towards a cybersecurity framework like NIST or something else that encompasses the IRS regs, the FTC regs, and everything else, and say, let's work you towards this, because then you're going to be compliant with almost all of the other things, and we can find the other little things and go out and do it. And compliance it's a pain in the butt, to be honest, right? But it's hard, and it's going to be more and more required as things move forward, because the IRS is tired of fake tax reports being filed and fraudulent tax reports and all the other stuff. Like that's what's driving all of these things. Do you use backup software? So again, yes, we do, or no, we don't. And is it encrypted? Even now we're seeing not necessarily in FTC safeguards or other ones, but insurance forms are starting to show and ask, is it air gapped? Which means, do you have a copy of your backup that is offline or totally disconnected from everything else so that it's hard for a hacker to go ruin that data set and make it harder, for you to restore your data? And what I would say is when it shows up on insurance forms, give it a couple of years and it'll be in regulation, because the insurance forms, they lobby a lot. If they're forcing people to do it from a private enterprise, then eventually the government picks up a lot of that stuff and works it into these regulations as they update them. Because if the insurance companies can require it, so can they. So we don't have it on here because, again, it's not specifically mentioned a lot of the time that it's air gapped in the regs, but it's going to come. And so again, what's your backup software? Is it encrypted or not? It does have to be encrypted. Do you use drive encryption? Like Windows 11 supports it natively, Windows 10 supports it natively, but you've got to go make sure, are your drives encrypted, and how are you managing that is always another question. Because the other hard part about drive encryption, it's easy. You can Google, how do I encrypt my drive in Windows or in a Mac or whatever, and it will give you step by step. The problem becomes if you don't have a way to manage the encryption and the keys, specifically the encryption keys, some update happens on your computer and it pops up the thing that says, your drive's encrypted. You can't get in unless you give me the key. Well, if you don't know where that key is, you have lost all the data on your computer. So that goes back to, do you have a good backup or do you have a good way to manage that? So again, with
The
services like
other,
we've got, we use like Intune or something like that to help manage that. So we have those keys captured as well. Bo?
yeah, the other important part is there is for the encryption, having it enabled and knowing what method it's through. If that device gets lost or stolen, the regulation says you have to be able to prove that it was encrypted at the time that it was lost or stolen.
Yeah.
And so having that solution where you can track what it's encrypted through and how will be that proof that you have to provide saying that it was encrypted at the time it was lost or stolen.
Yeah. And again, one of the things we do with our compliance service, if we're doing FTC safeguards compliance or whatever, is we can run reports and upload those into this dashboard we use that shows, hey, on this day, everything was encrypted, or here are 2 drives that weren't encrypted. And then we fixed it. And then we ran a new report, and here's the broken and here's the fix. And there's the window between them. And so that stuff is the stuff that we end up tracking a lot whenever we're doing actual compliance services for a client. Because again, the last thing you want to do is get audited or lose a laptop and have to prove it wasn't a data breach or whatever else. And if you don't have the data to prove it, then you have to treat it as a data breach. And then you got to look at data breach laws. And depending on the states and everything else, you might have to buy credit monitoring services. You might have to notify everybody. Like there's a lot that goes into that. That goes back to cyber insurance because a lot of those will help you pay for it. But if you can't prove to them you followed your own policies or the FTC safeguards, or wherever else, a lot of them will then come back and deny those claims, and then you're stuck paying for it. So, and we don't mean to be the boogeyman in this. This is just things that we have generally seen. And if you're good and you follow your rules and you create and understand the document when you create it, a lot of the time you're in good shape. This one is a VPN. So some people use VPN, some people don't. It depends on how you access data and a few other things. So this is usually a question that goes back to your IT provider or in-house IT of, are we using a VPN and what's the name? And then either in this document or another document, you usually have something that specifies a policy that specifies when and how you should use a VPN, right? If you're in the office, you don't need a VPN. If you're working from home, you should be using a VPN, those kinds of things. And so you end up having those kinds of policies that are created. So here's some other safeguarding taxpayer data. So again, this is IRS publication that's going to do this. So not necessarily FTC safeguards, but IRS pubs. So again, it depends on who you are in some of this, right? If you're on here and you're an auto dealer or whatever, you might not have to necessarily do this. But again, I would just go back to it's better to do it and comply with it because it's going to get you in the right spot. So do you create strong passwords, enforce a password history, minimum of 8 characters? They have to be complex. Avoid personal information in your passphrases. Again, you guys can read through these things. I don't necessarily want to read through every line. I will highlight though, using a password manager, that's a big thing. Again, if there's a lot of time where people are saving passwords in Chrome, and in fact, at the end of this, we've got a QR code where we'll do a free cybersecurity audit. One of the things of those audits that we do is we see how many passwords we can crack off your computer. And I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we cracked 1,000 passwords off of the saved Chrome passwords, or same, Firefox or Microsoft Edge or Safari or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so you want to use a password manager because it's better to protect those, not necessarily the browser tools to store passwords because they're not secure. So that's usually a software that you're using or whatever. They don't have to be a pain in the butt. Well deployed and well used is an extra step or an extra click. It's not a real big deal. And there's a lot of advantages of having them as a company. Like you can have shared groups and passwords and 2FA and other things where if somebody has to get into an account, they can, or if somebody gets hit by a bus, you might be able to get access back into their stuff, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of use for a password manager as well. Secure wireless networks. Again, I'm not necessarily going to go through all of these things, but it's, do you have your network that you're using for Wi-Fi? Is it secure? Are you sharing it with other things that it shouldn't be shared on? You shouldn't have a guest network that people can connect to, even if it has a password, like they should be connected. This one here I always think is funny is WPA2 and now even WPA3 are the newer levels of encryption. WEP is really, really old encryption from early days of wireless. Some people still have it enabled. We very rarely find it, but it's easy to crack. And so you don't want to use that. Protect stored client data, right? Disallow installing unnecessary software and applications. So again, we use different tools that we can manage what can and can't be installed. If you don't have a provider doing that or in-house isn't doing that, then I can go install whatever I want. That means that it's really hard to control that data. So again, some of these you get into policies and other things to talk about that. You need an inventory of your devices that have client data. That's an important thing to go through and do. And then you want to limit and disable access to stored client data. Again, a lot of the time, this isn't necessarily about trying to be a pain in the butt with security as much as being purposeful. The receptionist doesn't need access to all these extra tax return information or whatever it is. The person that's, a runner or this or that or whatever it is, you have different people that need different access to different information. You should make sure you audit that, know who has permissions, give them the right permissions to do their job. And if they don't need that data to do their job, they shouldn't have access to it. That kind of stuff, because you just want to limit that as much as you can. There's some proactive tools here. RMM is remote monitoring and management. It's tools that we use as IT providers, a lot, but you basically are using it to manage your software. So again, what are you using to do it? Pass, fail. Are you managing and updating browsers? Are you doing regular tune-ups and other things? And did you disable stored password feature? That goes back to that password manager where you're saying people can't store passwords. Again, you can add and remove things out of these sections. It's just about what you're actually doing and making sure that you're doing that. And if there's something you're going to remove, make sure you know why you're removing it and that it doesn't violate an actual policy. Because there might be an IRS reg or something in the FTC regs that specifically states you have to do this or do that. And you just want to make sure you're not pulling that out because you just don't want to do it. Creating a data security plan. So there's some more policy and other things down below, but you should have a data security plan. Is it ready? Is it available? Is it printed? So if all your computers go down, what do you do in the middle of a hack if you can't get back to it? Who's the point of contact? What happens if you're breached? Is calling the IRS, again, if you're an auto dealer, somebody else not calling the IRS, but if you're a CPA firm, you are, but do you have to call the IRS, your insurance company, a lawyer? Who do you need to call and notify? Like in Texas, if more than 250 Texans are affected by a data breach, there's a time frame when you have to notify the Secretary of State. And if you don't, and you've known about it, that's a violation of that law. Doesn't matter what state you're in. If 250 Texans have their data in your system and it's PII, like as defined above, you may have to go back and report that to the Secretary of State if you have a data breach. So those kinds of things, that's what should be in this data security plan and talking through that. Do you have how to spot data theft? Do you have security awareness training? And then if you do, how are you doing that awareness training? This is where we talked earlier about the types and impacts of information is stolen, right? So when you get looking at this, there's customer contact info, tax returns, billing information, personal information. So you're just rating this medium, high, low. You can tweak these and change these, but what you're looking at is what is the cost of lost work? Well, if you lost some contact information, you can still probably file a tax return, but it's really high and hard to do your job if you lost their tax returns and their billing information and that kind of thing, right? So what you're looking at is how does this impact your business and what is that overall impact based on those categories? Do you have anything to add to that one, Bo?
Yeah, so this is looking at a combination of what is the impact. So it's both business continuity and the impact of that loss for the record owner, which in your case would be you as the company that has the record, but then it's also about the individual that that record's information pertains to. So keeping that in mind as you're going through and looking at these, the classifications of low, medium, and high are based on likelihood and impact in most cases, but in this case, it's really only looking at the business impact for you and what that's going to be for the affected parties of whose records were lost.
Yeah. And same thing. So threats, vulnerabilities, and likelihood of an incident, right? So this is where you're starting to want to figure out, how likely is something going to happen, right? Accidental disclosure, theft by a criminal. Is that going to be a low or a high? Those kinds of things. And some of these depend on the industry and some of the security. You might actually say theft by a criminal is actually really high because we looked at it and our security sucks, right? Like we have none in place. That's going to be high. Now, if you have really good cybersecurity in place, that theft is going to be lower, right? The odds of somebody smashing the front door, coming in and getting into a locked room and locked filing cabinets and taking paper, pretty low, right? Those kinds of things. And so you're really trying to look and see where are these things. And again, you're going to go through and rate these, accidental destruction, fire, water, tornadoes, that kind of thing. And you might, if you're in a really tornado prone area, maybe one of these is slightly higher than low, right? I would say in general, likelihood is low that a tornado is going to hit your facility, those kinds of things. Then here we get to inventory. And again, I don't know if you can see over here, we're about a third of the way down this. So I'm going to scroll a little faster as we go. But inventory that contains client information. So you want to make sure you're taking an inventory. You probably have to add lines to that, right? Servers, desktops, laptops, filing cabinets. Like where do you find
Software
this?
applications. It's not just the physical inventory, it's the digital inventory too.
Yeah,
Software applications where you collect and gather that information because you may not actually have any stored on your physical system, but you're responsible for entering it and knowing where it's at and ensuring that whatever company, QuickBooks, for example, if you have QuickBooks Online, you're responsible for the records, but they're stored on QuickBooks servers. So QuickBooks has a responsibility to ensure to you that they're meeting these requirements as well.
yeah. Steps taken to protect your customer data. So again, this is where you're going to put in what are you doing to protect your data, right? Discarding files after 7 years. So again, this is a combination of digital and physical things that you're going to be doing to protect your customer data, the PII. Again, some of these are going to be repetitive, but you're just adding different pieces in there. So what security software you use? Copy the answers from above, right? Put all those in there, create your strong passwords. That was up above. Some wireless and other things, spot data theft. So again, these are things that you can look at and you can start looking at, and you can delete these things or add to them as it's something that you might want to do. Monitor the EFINs and the PTINs, right? Weekly checks to make sure you flag any abuses. Are you looking, at the IRS website, and then are you doing security awareness training? Are you guarding against phishing scams? So again, do you have a toolbar that you can report that, or whatever it is? It's built into Outlook. You can add that if you've got Microsoft 365. You can report phishing there, those kinds of things. So a lot of this stuff is out there. It's just turned on. You have to make sure it's turned on and that you are telling and training your staff on it, right? Be safe on the internet. So again, you're looking for these blue boxes, right? What do you use to patch third-party software? What we mean by that is like Adobe, browsers, other things. Typically, when you say patch management and OS, you're talking about Windows or Mac, and like the actual OS. Third party or all these other Java, Adobe, and all these other programs, updating your third party QuickBooks, Thomson Reuters, whatever other software you might have, doing those updates on it as well. Are you scanning downloaded files before you open them? That's a function of your antivirus. So a lot of the time, just making sure it's happening. Are you doing anything to kind of tune up? Do you look for the S in HTTPS, which is secure, right? So that's an encrypted connection between you and the endpoint, wherever it's at. Those kinds of things. FTC safeguard rules. So this gets into a little bit of a few, things here. What I would say is you have to have an employee designated for coordination. If that's you, you want to make sure that your company is actually doing these things, right? And so a lot of the time, that's where it gets back into you help manage a third-party IT company or something like that, because your name is now on this. And here's the other big thing that they've asked is proof of real-world experience. So this is where a lot of the time we've actually gone in and helped people with our compliance, vCISO, and other services. You can put our name here if you're paying for the right services and have the other things, because we know we have all these in place. We're going to help you create this policy. We're going to have audit trails in the things that we do. But oftentimes what happens is if nobody has any real world experience in your company, then are they really the person to be in charge of security? And that's the question that's being asked more and more around these, because otherwise it was just the owner put their name down and they've got no idea about cybersecurity. So now you actually have to say, like, what's their experience? Maybe your experience is you got some CPE at, a few different things and you've been through some other things, and you can put that there, right? I'm not saying that it isn't got to be an IT guy for the last decade, but you definitely want to say, I've at least had a bit of understanding and not just, hey, I just got hired and they handed me this book and that's my experience. That's probably not going to fly well if you ever get audited, and that kind of thing. So you're supposed to do annual reporting to your board of directors on any issues related to the security program. Training programs will be utilized. Audit trails, so done through who's the company, it'd be us or another company you might be using, or their software if you have your own auditing, internal IT, whatever it is. How are you going to dispose of things? What safeguards have been designed to protect client data? And then a qualified provider with real world experience has been hired. So who is that company? Again, this can be in-house if it is or whatever, but the real world experience becomes this real operator that a lot of people are missing these days. And that's the hard part. So service providers, right? You want to vet service providers. So if you're hiring us or somebody else, you want to vet them. You want to define the expectations. You want to make sure there's monitoring that happens. You want to schedule assessments. You want to make sure they're doing background checks. You want to audit their compliance with their own things, like make sure they can prove they're compliant to their own stuff. Do they have incident reporting? What's it look like? And what are their security certs, right? Do their staff have to have security certs? Because I can tell you on our side, they do. to be a certain level of engineer, you have to have your security plus. Even the lower level guys have to get A plus and network plus certifications. And then our security guys are getting more certifications that are in, into the security thing. And that's one of the things, again, I think that makes us different. We actually have dedicated security guys, and a lot of managed service providers, IT companies like us don't. They just have somebody who's done it more than everybody else. And we've actually got dedicated guys that are doing that. Current risks, this section, Bo, is really you're just looking for what are the risks and then how you're going to mitigate it, right? So
Yeah,
risk,
this is really driven by the assessments themselves,
yeah,
and looking to ensure that these policies are enabled on devices and that they are enforced. And we actually have to test these. And if you're the one doing your own internal assessment, you have to test them and prove that you're doing them and capture proof that you tested it and it worked. The
yeah.
big caveat is that it worked.
Yeah. Or if it didn't work, that you fixed it and then it worked, right? So again,
Right.
it's okay to fail. That doesn't mean it's the end of it, but then did you fix it? And can you prove that you fixed it? And that becomes the part. So at the end of the day, it's got to work. It's not that you get one bad report and it's all over. It's that you got one bad report and then you fixed it. And then it's a better report and then you fixed more. And then it's a better report and you fixed more. And you're making that progress up, right? So again, you're looking for it. So leaving a computer unattended, how are you dealing with that? Allowing unattended access to tech computers, and how are you doing that, right? Is it access restricted? Those kinds of things. Again, some of this stuff you've kind of got to read through and do, right? Do you have a written response plan? So in that written response plan, this is what you're trying to do. Again, you can find some other templates of some of these things online and everything else to start with boilerplate. What we've done is basically say you need to have a written response plan that defines the objectives, that establishes the procedure to activate, right? So what's going to happen when you have a breach? What happens if you come in Monday morning and every computer in your business is ransomware? What are you going to do? You should have a written response plan that says we're going to call the insurance company, we're going to call the IT provider, we're going to call the lawyer, we're going to call, like, this is what we're going to do and work through it. We're not going to come in, freak out, reboot and delete things and start restoring data, because like if you don't have a plan and you don't know even what your like insurance requirements are around it, a lot of the time the insurance guys need to get involved because they're going to do forensics. And if you start restoring everything before they've had a chance to do forensics, they might not pay out the claim because they didn't have a chance to prove what was happening or whatever else might have gone on, right? That it was your fault or a hacker's fault or whatever it is. And that's the other side a lot of the time that this leads to other questions is a lot of people, when an incident happens, they just think, oh, we got good backups we can restore. But there's oftentimes insurance, or we've had federal agencies show up if you're dealing with, counties or other things, and they might say, no, stop. We're going to do all of the forensics before you can touch any of this hardware. So that gets back into, can you spin up cloud resources or disaster recovery appliances that are basically second versions so you could do restores and be back operational while they're doing forensics? And so a lot of the time as you're going through some of these things, that's the questions that come out of this. So again, you're just looking for, developing procedures and documenting those, that kind of stuff. Employee management and training, what is going on here? Again, if we read through this whole thing, it'd take hours just to read through it. And a lot of the time there are questions that come out of it. But, what are the strict guidelines and devices like laptops? I always laugh because PDAs is in here just because it's in here. You never know, but cell phones and other things. But that's why we want you to read through this, because if nobody has an actual PDA, delete it. But it also sometimes thinks like, what else do they have? Because maybe it's not a PDA, but somebody's writing down in a remarkable digital notebook. That's something that needs to be governed if they're using that, right? Their iPad or other tablets and things like that. If it's got devices they're using to collect data, that's going to end up being in that list of things you want to do. And let's see here, personal computers used for work have to have security software, other things on it. So again, you're defining those things and what's on there. Information systems, again, what you're looking for here, Bo, what's this information system? This is mostly trying to, I'm assuming, is around creating the inventory of where all the data exists and that kind of thing. Is that?
Yeah, it's really to help guide you when you're building the inventory of where all of your data exists and defining what those information systems are. And some of it is to give you a bit of more clarity, like we mentioned QuickBooks Online before, or any of your, if you're a CPA, any tax software that you're using, that vendor due diligence, 9 times out of 10, that information actually lives in their servers. So you have to make sure that they're doing their part to be just as compliant as you are.
Detecting and managing system failures, you have to have a process for this, right? What are you doing? How are you monitoring it? How are you auditing it? Again, a lot of the third-party IT companies will do this, but you want to make sure you have a way. And some of these things that maybe you can monitor for, or maybe you can't if you have in-house IT or don't have the tools, but you should have plans around third-party patching and if it worked or not, software updates for Windows and if it worked or not, those kinds of things, even if somebody had to manually go check it, which is not how we would advise doing it. But you need to have, like, it is required to update your systems. And so you have to have a place, something in place to do that, to be able to do it. In the event of an information breach, this is kind of that incident response policy, right? So who's the person in charge? Are we going to contact the IRS? What's that information? So in an emergency, we're not digging for it. Who are the experts? Who's the insurance company? Who's the clients? If you have to, and again, before you go reaching out and just talking to clients, you want to go back and talk to your insurance company, everything else. They have experts for this. And if you're building this policy, a lot of the time you can call them and talk to them and they'll help you build out pieces and parts of some of this. Because what you don't want to do is answer the phone and go, we got hacked, and tell everybody all this bad information and let that get out there. You want to control that, which is why, like, a hospital recently got hacked by us and it was not admitted that it was a hack for a long time, right? It was, we have an IT issue, we have a systems issue, our systems are down, those kinds of things. There's reasons for that. They're trying to mitigate risk, reduce exposure, not get sued, all those kinds of things.
To clarify that statement, we didn't hack the hospital. They are physically located near us and they got hacked. So it wasn't that they got hacked by us.
Okay, it wasn't a client of ours, and we didn't hack anybody. It was a hospital in proximity to my current location that was hacked by some people, not of American descent, I do not think. Anyway, so again, do you need to do anything with credit monitoring? If you've got clients, are you gonna have to do anything with the FBI? Again, some of these depends on the industries, the clients, and who you have. You might have to actually go and pull these people in. Like, we got called once by the Secret Service, and it's because a client of ours, which was a construction company, was working with a county, and the county got hacked, but they spoofed the name of the company that we did. So everything we did was good. The Secret Service wanted to verify logs. There was no breach. Everything was good. They bought a similar domain name and they ended up doing some wire fraud. They got $500,000 because it was a county, because it was big enough, because it was international. The Secret Service got involved, right? And so, like, we ended up sitting and talking with the Secret Service, and they told us that our logs were great, actually better than a lot they normally see. We were in that meeting for a few hours. It is a scary thing necessarily to go into, but at the end of it, we had done everything right, and our client was totally in the clear, which is what you want, because we'd followed process procedure, had documentation, had logs, had all the things that needed to be. So, in the event of fire, medical emergency, burglary, natural disaster. So again, same kind of thing, right? You're just going to have a different thing. But in the event of a fire, what are you going to do? What's got to happen? Medical emergency, have a backup person designated with access. So again, we always kind of half flippantly say if you get hit by a bus, but that's a real thing. If somebody gets hurt in a hospital, coma, killed, medical emergency, and they're disabled in some way, are they going to make it so people can't do their jobs or payroll can't run or you can't file tax returns? So you want to make sure you have backups in a lot of those cases. And again, that goes back to having a good password manager, because then you can share data if you need to prevent that, but you can do it in a very secure manner to make sure that you've got redundancy. Burglary, what do you have to do? Call the police, call the companies. Again, if there's certain customers that you have information, maybe it's not just the police, maybe it is the FBI, maybe it is a bigger down the road kind of organization you might have to, again. And then in the event of natural disaster, what are you going to do? And looking through that and creating that. So here's some policies as well. And again, a lot of this is just read through it and work through this, right? Safeguarding their client data. So the purpose of this is to outline necessary conduct and behaviors. There's email, so now we're going to talk about email and web links. You need to exercise caution. Don't open emails, attachments that you don't know, and links that you don't know. So this is the part where you're just going through and checking these policies and saying, do you agree with it or not? Are you going to train your people to it or not? And you're going to add or delete based on what you're going to do. The point is, this is a policy that needs to be trained across your company as part of the WISP, right? The WISP has to address safeguarding client data. Like, you have to have a policy as part of your written information security plan. And so this is boilerplate, but go through, read through these sections and edit them, change them, update them, work with your current provider to do whatever you might need to do. Same thing, policy of PI, data retention, destruction. What are you going to do here? What's it like? Do you have to hold it for 7 years? Is there any other thing? Do you have different rules that might apply? Because I think, not that this is here, but it's just a different rule. So as an example is, I think it's in one of the Carolinas, after somebody turns 18, you have to hold the records for another X number of years. So 7 years might not be the real number, right? It's not 7 years. It's like you have to hold it through all of their youth and then hold it for so many years after that, right?
So yeah, in North Carolina, anybody who's any medical provider administering treatment to an underage minor is required to retain those records for up to 10 years after they turn 18.
Yeah. So now you might have 28 years of records, right? So it might not be seven. So that's what I'm saying is you want to read through this, make sure you're meeting your regulation, your guideline, in whatever industry that you might be in. How you destroying things and everything else. Another policy here, employee and contractor agreement to protect PII. So if you have contractors that you use, whether it's a third-party IT provider or other people that might come in and have access to that, you want them to sign off on this. As silly as it is, you should probably have the janitor, the cleaning service sign off on this and say they understand that if they see documents on a desk or whatever, might happen, access to filing cabinets where they're cleaning, what that PII is and why they can't touch it, right? They need to have a regulation around that, and they need to have a policy internally at the cleaning company that they're just like, and a lot of them do, you just don't talk about it. So this is one of those where you have to go back and say, hey, would you have a policy to make sure that you know how to deal with private and securable information, right? That PII. Required software. So all software listed in this 4557 and FTC safeguards. So you need to have antivirus. You should have endpoint detection. You should have spyware. You should have, or anti-spyware, rather. An IDS or intrusion detection system. Sometimes endpoint detection response is called EDR, right? So you get EDR name. So you're wanting to fill these out and go in, and these are the ones that you generally need to do to have in place by these regulations. And so you should be able to go in and fill this out. Again, all this stuff was filled
So
out up above. You're just bringing it down here.
it was filled up above, but now this section here is identifying that this is required to meet FTC safeguards rules for accountants, dealerships, anybody who is processing financial data under the new and the list of what organization types are affected by FTC safeguards expanded exponentially when this rule was published last year. It was again updated in October of this year. So this form has already been updated to include those changes from the 2024 proposed um, modifications. So these are now required
Yeah.
under the IRS publication and FTC safeguards. So you have to have something that meets one of these items in this list at the bottom, and it is different than the one from the top.
Yeah. And that's why this document should be reviewed every year, because there's going to be updates to these regulations and things that happen every year as well. So final instructions, right? Print and get a professional copy at a print shop, get it spiral bound, keep it in your office, update it annually, make sure you know when the next review is due. And then you're signing off on this document. And that's really it, right? Like I say, that's it. There's a lot that needs to be done in here. And so what I would say with that is if it's something that you guys want help with, or are feeling overwhelmed, that kind of thing, we are offering. One, we can help. You guys can always call. But if you scan this QR code or just go to vectorchoice.com/contact or info@vectorchoice, fill out one of the forms on the website, for we would like help or whatever. We would love to do a free security scan. And usually what we do is that free security scan is the start of this process. Let's do an audit. Let's see where you're at. Let's see what's missing. Let's see what you think you have and what's actually there. And once we do that audit, then we can start talking through what needs to happen next. What are the next things that you need to do? Do we need to build the WISP? And if we do need to build the WISP, what policies do we need to have in place, and how do we enforce those, and all the other things that can come out of that? And so really, I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything else. A couple things kind of popped up and I just hit, as we went through. But that is really what we have for you today. We'd love for you guys to reach out if you have issues or concerns, or just think this is overwhelming and we don't know where to start or what to do with it. Like I say, we can start with that free security scan. It's no obligation. We're not high pressure salespeople. We truly want to go all beat the bad guys, and the best way to beat the bad guys is if we all work together. And so how can we help you do that? And a lot of time that just starts with a security scan and acknowledging where you're at and where you need to go and what that looks like. Bo, do you have anything to add?
No, that's the big thing, just to keep in mind this WISP that you're getting is a template. It is a high level overview of all of the things that you need to ensure that you're considering and including when you're writing your own WISP. Take the time, modify it to your unique business environment. It is not all inclusive. There are elements that you may be required to meet. And again, this was written with the understanding that there are two different types of FTC safeguards requirements based on the number of records. So this was trying to encompass it falls under both of those. If you have over 5,000 records, you will have some additional items that may not have been included on this WISP.
Yeah. Yeah, like some of them, you have to have an annual penetration test and some other things, and you'd want to put that into what your security plan is that annually at this date or this quarter or whatever, we will do a penetration test, and you may define who is going to do it for you and everything else. We're going to use this company to do it or whatever that might be, so that you have all that documented. So um, with that, I wish you guys all a great week, and we would love to hear from you. And if not, say download the WISP and holler if you guys need any help with it. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.